So, I was sitting down just shy of a week ago to rewatch the original Cheaper by the Dozen, just to refresh my memory. It's been like maybe 10 years since I saw the original Stephen Martin movie, so maybe that would help me be more fair on this movie. Maybe it would help me answer the question, is this movie any faithful to the original? But here it is, folks. Throw that out of the window. The original movie is from 1950. Did anyone of you know that? Well, now you do. So any of you who are trying to compare it to the original, you probably failed.
You failed!
As I did. This movie is the remake of the remake, just to straighten that out. Hello, fellow Disney Plus watcher. It's nice to talk with you about Disney Plus today. If you love Disney and Disney Plus as much as I do and enjoy talking about it, why not click the subscribe button to stay up to date and give it a like so that more people can find this video. Thanks. Cheaper by the Dozen 2022 is the third installment of the original story, starring Zach Braff as Paul Baker and Gabrielle Union as Zoey Baker. Together, they share a family of 12 kids. Whilst Paul and Zoey try to run a successful business and navigate raising a dozen children, when a major opportunity arises for Baker's breakfast, their whole world is turned upside down. If you've seen the original Steve Martin movie and you remember the beats of that movie, then no real spoilers for Cheaper by the Dozen. If you aren't familiar with the Cheaper by the Dozen formula, I'm ruining some broad things for you. But again, no specific reveals or spoilers for this new iteration of the story. Okay, let me start with this. The idea of Baker's breakfast family business is quite brilliant. Why is that so brilliant? Well, remember that in the original, I'm gonna refer to the Steve Martin movie as the original from now on, Tom Baker tries to balance his football team with his responsibilities for the family, like work and life, and how that ultimately goes completely wrong. Well, now our protagonists' work-related life is directly integrated with that of the whole family, meaning now the wife is in on the stakes of the company and the success of the brand. So not that I dislike the original Kate Baker character, but to put it bluntly, we don't have the whining wife that looks at the sidelines and complains about Tom Baker's lack of attention and time for the family. We have a more proactive woman here that actually has power struggles with her husband over the brand. The brand is the ownership of the whole family. We get scenes between Paul and Zoey where it's all about what is this business becoming. Is it even both of ours anymore, or is Paul running away with the ideas and selling out? Zoey actually sees her family fall apart throughout the movie because of her choices too. She's completely in on the family business, and the choices Paul make directly affect the whole family, and he's not the only one to blame for it. There's an extra layer to the Bakers trying to balance family and business. I like that. So early on in the movie, as was the case in the original, the Baker family moves from their cozy family home to a brand new super expensive mansion because now there's money to spend, the opportunity to live close to work, live more luxurious, and get in on the great offer that involves Baker's breakfast branching out and Baker's special sauce to be distributed all over the country. I do think the contrast between the first house we get introduced to and then the new giant villa was a little too small. I feel like it would have been better if they were particularly living in a small, cozy, but old and dirty house, so it would have felt that much more of a journey when they ultimately, if you've watched the original, return to their original home at the end. The house we see them live in at the beginning is still very clean. Overall, too, I wouldn't give it much thought because it isn't that big of a deal for a movie like this. I would have preferred a little more visual personality though. The camera work, the lighting, the sets, it's all plain white, bright, boring, like mostly filmed in one of those comedy show studios, at least it feels that way. Again, not that major of a deal. This is a family-centric Disney TV movie, so I will give this movie some slack, but this movie is not visually interesting in any way. Like, a little more of this image would have been cool. This shot is striking, kind of cool, but moving on. I'm going to keep being positive about this movie for a little bit. I found Paul Baker to be a pretty enjoyable lead role. It's nice that he has some nuance, like he's not a complete suck-up, but he's also sacrificing a lot to make his dream happen. The company that buys Baker's breakfast, of course, tries to change the whole brand into something else to the point they force a lunch menu on Baker's breakfast. Paul tries to make it work through the whole movie, playing both sides, compromising, worrying about what to wear on his first pitch, and I found all that to be enjoyable. Some humor is pretty good, especially in the first half of the film. I found myself chuckling quite a bit, Paul and Zoey naming their dogs Bark, Obama, and Joe Biden. I don't know who came up with that, but that's funny. Enjoyable lead, some good humor. The acting is quite okay overall, except for some of the kids, but they're kids, big deal. But folks, I'm running out. This movie is kind of a train wreck.
This is the worst!
And hey, I respect for the craft of filmmaking, respect for everybody who gave their all to make this movie happen. First of all, there's too many characters the movie is trying to keep track of. And this one is an easy one to point out. Like, yeah, sure, cheaper by the dozen. The whole point of this story and the charm of it is that everything is out of control and that this is that one movie that benefits from having a chaotic number of characters we can't keep track of. Hell, there's even a quick bit of dialogue between Paul and his wife. Like they're saying, I feel like there were more kids than usual. Yeah, right? I didn't even recognize some of them. Just as they were going to school. I'm paraphrasing here, but exactly this is the charm of this whole having a dozen kids concept. So I know that. But the movie suffered from having the bullied kid, the girl that's forbidden to have a boyfriend, the twins that can't sleep because they think there's a monster under their beds, the this, the that, the mopey teenager, the everyone. And some became pretty important, and there was a point around halfway through the movie that it became just too much. And honestly, the movie felt longer than The Batman to me. I'm not even joking. I don't know if you've seen it. That movie is 3 hours and this is a 1 hour and 42 minutes without credits. There's a scary amount of time where I didn't know anymore why I should care about Paul's quest to make the Bakers franchise happen. Even though that was the best part of the film. There's a chunk of the movie that goes all in on high school drama, a kid getting bullied, a basketball team struggles, I don't know, a nephew of the family, and oh boy. Some of that drama the characters go through is shoved onto, I'm not kidding, shoved onto racial discrimination and all that, and that serious topic. That went completely south in my opinion. Because hear me out, I want to take serious topics like racism and all that seriously. I want to. Heck, that's why sometimes I'm cheerleading all the way for some great story-driven representation. It's why I think the combined family idea in this movie that changes up the original formula is a great idea. It provides some nice awkward scenes between both the original father of some of the kids and the original mom of some of the kids and Paul. It's fun to give Cheaper by the Dozen a modern update and have a chaotic biracial couple trying to run a combined family. And it makes the movie's premise even a little more realistic. How do you get a dozen kids? Really, how do you get there? 12 of them. Well, get a second marriage, that'll do it. But the serious topic of racial division that we shouldn't take lightly, oh my god, it's so unrespectfully handled. Yes, this movie virtue signals. Yes, sometimes when I really think it should be called out. I mean, please don't assume I'll be joining a Geeks and Gamers podcast anytime soon, but with movies like this, that side of the internet really has a point. Sometimes, when it's done poorly, a woke message can come across as needless victimization of characters, at the expense of good characters. Woke media can go pretty wild sometimes, but it's not often I feel so strongly about that. I'm not against modern updates, room for issues of today's age, and representation in media. Yes, please, that's not what this is about. There's a scene between Zoey's ex, the father of some of the children, and Paul, where this guy starts ranting about, you might have married a black woman, having black kids, but you will never have any idea what they might be going through because they're black.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
And then, of course, white boy apologizes. And the thing is, this scene, at first, functioned as a story about two dads uncomfortably fighting over the rights to who raises which children. It's sometimes an uncomfortable reality that is great to be explored. There's a complicated family situation where Paul is responsible for the kids, but Zoey's ex is the original father of some of the kids, so who has what to say over the children? That's a great dilemma. Then I want to propose this. Stick with that story. Stick with the characters. Because this was just one of the examples. Zoey herself also makes a point about not fitting in because of her color in this new environment they're moving into. But here's the thing. We don't see that ever. We see her mentioning it and virtue signal, but we don't see her suffer from that. Why not? Why then have that message in your movie? I want the topic of societal issues like racism taken seriously. Don't slap them onto characters just to make a point. Normally, I try to shy away from this, talk around it, say, well, sometimes wokeness is really good, sometimes it's a bit awkward, too noticeable, whatever, and that's true, it's a fine line, but I don't want to talk about it. It's a sensitive topic. And it's not for me. But this movie is out of line to me. This was terrible. Dear Disney, if you want the sometimes, honestly, toxic people to stop and complain about virtue signaling and forced politics all the time, well then don't make movies like this. Do not have a character that says, she moved to Idaho for the diversity. I'm gonna repeat that. There's a character in this movie that says, she moved to Idaho for the diversity. That's a spoken line in this movie. I'm not joking. It's about a secondary character and it's completely wasted. It's not a plot point. It's nothing. It's not part of the... It's complete... It's trash. I'm sorry. I'm even going off script here. It's... I can't do this. It's so bad. It doesn't get any worse. Enough about real-world politics. The third act of this movie is one of the worst train wrecks of a wrap-up I've seen in the last year. I'm sorry I'm so hard on this movie. I respect everyone who made this movie happen, but this was to me a shell of the original. I won't give anything away, but one of the most important beats of the original, where the outcast kid is running away and the whole family finally comes together at the end to try and find him, they do something like that in this movie in under 4 minutes.
What?
And absolutely nothing about it is developed through the movie. We get character resolutions of characters we barely got to know and got to interact, and it's truly terrible. I can't even... Oh, and the out-of-control feel with all these kids running around and wrecking shop. That energy, that stressful stuff wasn't really present. We do get one scene early on in the movie where some kids are mountain biking through the hallways and stuff, but it feels like they wanted that element in there, but did so little with it. The dialogue is also meh at best and terrible at worst. There's a character in this movie, one of the kids, that says, "Just let us feel our feelings." Just let us feel our feelings is a line in this movie that got written down and somebody got paid to write that. It has one of the worst third acts, cheaper by the dozen, touches on the beats of the original, but is ultimately boring, with too many characters that become important around the middle parts of the movie to even try and care about the main story. Some dialogue is the bottom of the barrel you can find out there, and ultimately, I laughed a couple of times. I really like Zach Braff as the main character. A likable main character is a big plus, so I will give it that, but ouch! Woo! Okay, I'm thinking about wrapping this up. Thank you so much for watching. I'm curious, what did you think of Cheaper by the Dozen? Did you like this video? Then there's the simple way to show support. Thank you so much. For now, have a wonderful day and see ya.